This conference will now be recorded.
Hi guys, good morning. I hope you are able to hear me. Can anyone please confirm?
Hi,
Able to
good
hear?
morning.
Hi,
Very
good
good
Hi,
morning.
morning.
Perfect. Yeah, so this is Bhaskar. I have 12 plus years of IT experience and I'm working for one of the Indian based company presently from Hyderabad. And this is briefly about me. And I'm having experience with I started my career with MSBA, the complete stack of Microsoft Business Intelligence. And later I got an opportunity to work for Azure Data Factory and Power BI. And later I got an opportunity to work with even Azure Databricks. So this is about my skill set. And yeah, so before starting Azure Data Factory, before starting what we are going to discuss today, do you have any idea about any ETL tools in the market? Any ETL tool? How many of you know what is the use of ETL tool? Or at least if you're already aware of Azure Data Factory, what is the intention or what is the use of Azure Data Factory? Do you have any idea about it? Anyone?
I think it's kind
Yeah,
of a cloud.
transforming the data from I'm extracting and transforming.
Depending on data,
Okay,
to source the data,
okay,
SQL concept.
okay. So let me take you through a little more in detail. Let's say, for example, basically this particular two tools, we are going to use it for data analytics. Okay, so data analytics we are going to use. So in order to do this, first you need to have a data. So data is always going to be in the form of rows and columns. Okay, so different varieties of data you are going to have it. You will be having structured data, you will be having a semi-structured data, and you will be having unstructured data also. At this point of time, I just wanted to say a data is related to your business. If you take a Flipkart or if you take a Amazon, we are going to order a product. When you order a product, that means you're doing a transaction. So when you do the transaction, your transaction details are going to be captured by Amazon. And they're going to store all those transaction details from person to person, location to location. They're going to capture and they're going to keep in their storage. So why they're going to keep in their particular storage? Is that only for just delivering the product? If they wanted to deliver it, of course, they needed all those details after delivering the product also, but still they're going to keep all those data, all those records. The reason is if they wanted to grow in the business, definitely they need to have a complete transaction details. I mean to say, if they started a business 10 years ago, 10 years of data they're going to have it. So what is the use of this? they're going to start understanding the data. So which product is getting more sales, or which location is having more demand for that particular product. So one product is going to have a less demand in one area and higher demand in other area. So why it is more demand in that particular area? So why not in this area? So all those things, if they wanted to do analysis, they need to have a data. If they have a data, then only they can get all this stuff. So in order to store the data, they're going to use some storage. So whatever the storage it is, I'm just saying data storage. This is a data storage. How they are going to bring the data into this particular places, we are not going to worry about it because this is not our job. How they are going to bring the data into the storage is not our job. This will be taken care by application developers. So some applications are going to be there to bring the data into the storage. Some applications will be there to bring the data into the storage. So from this place, we need to take the data. So at this point of time, I'm just going to talk about just the data. The data is going to have a numbers, the data is going to have a text, the data is going to have a date, and so on. This is completely raw data. This raw data we need to transform into cleansed data. We cannot use the raw data for doing analysis. So we need to transform this data into a saved. We need to save the data since the data storage is not going to have a saved. So in order to save the data in the I mean to say in the traditional approach before Azure Data Factory or Azure Data Bricks is coming into the picture, there was a traditional ETL tools. From the Microsoft itself, we have a traditional ETL tool called SSIS, SQL Server Integration Services. And we have a data stage from IBM. We have a Informatica. Okay, and like this, we have a different ETL tools in the market. So all those tools, what they used to do is they used to bring the data from the storage. They used to bring the data from the data storage, and they're going to transform the data by using this particular ETL tools. They were traditional ETL tools. So traditional ETL tools are not going to handle a bigger volume of data. If you have a big volume of data, or if you have a big data, that is not possible to process by traditional approach. The storage is very bigger problem for them. And when you have a storage issue, definitely you're going to have a processing issue also. If you have a TB sub data in the data store, in order to process this data, the traditional approach was not suitable. Traditional approach is not suitable because they are not built for that. They are not built for parallel processing. So they have a lot of issues. They will handle only structured data. These systems or these platforms are going to handle only structured data, whereas your Azure Data Factory or your Databricks is going to handle all types of data, not only structured data. We can also handle semi-structured data, and we can also handle unstructured data also. And all these existed ETL projects are there, right? The traditional projects. If they have a SSIS project, or if they have a data stage or Informatica projects, they are migrating towards to the cloud platform. So when they are trying to move towards to the cloud platform, the best tool in the market, if they wanted to go for cloud without writing the code, if they're trying to see in that perspective, 100% that is towards to the data factory. So there is no such kind of service in the market right now to handle big data processing without writing the code. So if you wanted to go for other services, you need to write a code. Even Databricks is little code we need to write it, but not much more. When you compare with this one, this is completely code-free ETL tool. Azure Data Factory is a code-free ETL tool. We don't require to write a code. So that is the use of this. So what I'm going to do is, in place of my traditional ETL services, I'm going to use the new generation ETL service called Azure Data Factory. So Azure Data Factory is a code-free ETL tool. I'm going to use the Azure Data Factory here. So what this is going to do is, it is going to extract the data from the data store. So Azure Data Factory is going to extract the data. The process of taking data from the data store, that we can call it as a extraction. Even if you go for traditional also, we are going to do the same thing. When I'm trying to extract the data from the data storage, your data store may be Oracle, your data store may be SQL Server, or your data store may be file system. Like this, there are various data stores are there. Depends on your requirement, you may store your data, and Azure Data Factory is providing feasibility to bring the data from a different kind of platforms. So if you want to bring the data from Oracle, yes, you can take it from the Oracle. If you want to take it from the MySQL, yes, you can take it from MySQL. Or if you want to take the data from Azure storages, specifically Azure storage is also there, and we can also take the data from there. So the process of taking data from the data storage, we are going to call this as a extraction. So once you extract the data, we are going to do the transformation. In general, if you go for traditional tools, traditional ETL tools, you used to do the transformation right after extracting. But when you go for Azure Data Factory, we don't recommend you to do the transformations right after extracting. I'm just going to dump the data into the destination. The destination here is Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. My destination for my data source is, I'm going to take the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 as a destination. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to dump the data. So the process of dumping, I'm just saying it is a loading. The transformation I'm not taking here. You can also do the transformation here, but I'm not doing the transformation. So the reason why I'm going to dump into the ADLS is, ADLS is specifically designed for big data. ADLS is specifically designed for big data processing. So because of that reason, in the first stage of ETL project, in the first stage of your Azure data project, what we are going to use, we are going to extract the data and we are going to dump the data. This entire process, we can call it as a data ingestion. The first stage is data ingestion stage. This is the data ingestion. We are ingesting the data. We are just ingesting, we are not doing any transformation here. We are just moving data from one place to another place. So your data source may be anything, but 100% your destination is, in the first stage of your activities is Azure Data Lake Storage Center is your destination. So I'll talk about this more in detail later. At this point of time, now your data store is Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Now data is there here. From the different data sources, you took the data and you kept in a single place, in a lake. This is a lake you can take from anywhere and you can just keep your data in the lake. All types of data we can keep it here. We can keep a structured data, we can keep a semi-structured data, we can keep unstructured data also. Once the data is landed in the first stage, then what you are going to do it. So again, we have not done any transformation in the first stage. We need to save the data. Means shaping means it's a process of transforming from one format to another format. Here you are going to have a raw data. So same to same here also we are going to have a raw data only. We're just dumping from one place to all the stuff we are dumping into one place. Here the data was distributed in the data storage, but here is data is integrated. Data is collected and kept at one place, but still this is a raw data. I wanted to save this data. I wanted to save the data. So in order to save the data, again we need to do the second stage of activities. The second stage is always going to be transformation. So transformation comes into the picture in the second stage. In the second stage, your source is Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, which is having raw data. Again, I'm going to use data factory here. Azure Data Factory. The process of taking data, as I said, we're going to call that as a extraction. The process of taking data, we can call it as a extraction. So once you extract the data, we are going to do the transformation also. We are going to do the transformation. Without writing the code, with just UIs, just clicks, by doing just drag and drop and doing some clicks, we can do transformation. So transformation also we don't require to write any code for this. So once it is transformed, the transformed data, the data which is applied transformation, has to be stored in the destination. The destination for this is again Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. The destination for this again is Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 only. We are going to feed the data into the destination. The process of feeding the data, we can say it is loading. So if we combine all three together, I mean to say extraction, transformation, and loading. If we combine all three together, we can say it is a ETL processing. So your Azure Data Factory is a ETL tool, or we can say ELT tool. Why we are calling this ELT tool is, in the first stage we are ingesting, we are loading, and then we are doing the transformation. So ELT, extraction, loading, and transformation. So basically this we can call it as not a ETL tool, it is a ELT tool. But we can also call this as a ETL tool in this particular situation. So I'm just going to say in the second stage, what we are going to do is, we are doing what? Transformation. Data transformation. So we're going to do the data transformations here. So in order to do the transformation, we are having a different approaches. The data factory is having a data flow. Okay, so depends on your requirement, depends on your budget, you're going to use this data flow. And there is a one more approach is there from the same data factory itself. We can use stored procedures. So why we need to go for these two different approaches? What happens if we go for this, and what are the benefits that we are going to use if we go for stored procedures? For every activity, there is a pros and cons. So depends on the situation, depends on the requirement that we need to take a decision. So I'll talk about this later. This is too early to talk about it. So either one of them we can use to transform the data based on your business requirement. So this is about data transformation. So whatever the data is there in the second destination, this particular data we can call as cleansed data. This is not a raw data. You saved it and you stored data in the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So after having the data here, you can give this data to any reporting tool. We have a Power BI. When it comes to the Microsoft, definitely they're going to use Microsoft Power BI. So Microsoft Power BI directly brings the data from this particular place for reporting. So that is one approach. So who is going to access the data from this particular places? The various people are going to get it. So one of them is the Power BI, one of the reporting tool it is. They can access the data directly. You'll be having a connector to bring the data from the data lake storage Gen 2 into the Power BI. This is a file system. As you know, file system is not going to have a relationship between from one file to another file. File to file, we cannot have a relationship. So basically, we are going to have a data warehousing because we are talking about data. So when you are talking about data, definitely we are going to have a data warehousing. I wanted to make a relationship between one table to another table. So here we are not maintaining any relationships, but you can maintain the relationships inside the Power BI. So you can take directly from here to slice and dice the data. But I wanted to have a separate database. I wanted to have a very huge volume of data I'm having. I wanted to make it faster when it is reading. If it is trying to read the data from here, what happens is there is no index for the table, or there is no like the processing or the processing of reading data is not going to be that much faster because this is a file system. But if I have a storage in the Azure data warehouse, we can also have a Azure data warehouse, or we can also call this as a Synapse database. Now people are calling this as a Synapse database. So this we can store the data by taking data from there and to here. In order to bring the data from this particular place to Azure data warehouse, we are going to do it, and you'll be having a different set of tables, and you'll be having like physical tables and external tables. We are going to have it. So that means if you store the data here, the tables are going to support for distribution. So hash distribution, we are having round robin distribution and replicate distribution. Three different types of distributions are available here to make it very faster. So that is the internal mechanism. So we can also move the data from here to here. So even if you wanted to move the data into this place, again you need to use the Azure Data Factory only. You need to use Azure Data Factory to move data from Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 to Azure Data Warehouse. And apart from that, we can take from this particular place to tabular model. So they are going to create a external tables on top of this. So different approach is there. External tables just like a view. Okay, so once we create that view and we can access the view by using analysis services tabular model, we are going to do some kind of time intelligence calculations by using the DAX. All the analysis calculations that we are going to do in this particular place, again it will go back to Power BI. So in order to move the data from cleanse the data to Azure Data Warehouse, we are going to use Azure Data Factory only. Extraction, transformation, and loading into Azure Data Warehouse. So this is going to have a relationship between the tables. We can have it, but whereas in the data storage in the file system we are not going to have it. So here we can use the data factory. In the second stage we are going to use the data factory. In the first stage also we are going to use the data factory. And one of the beauty thing that we experienced while working, dynamic pipelines. We can create a dynamic pipelines by using Azure Data Factory. So instead of creating 100 pipelines, max to max we can create a 5 pipelines. These 5 pipelines can serve service of this 100 pipelines. So that kind of feasibility we are having as part of the Azure Data Factory. So that is what run and maintenance is very easier if you have a requirement. So I'm going to talk about it how we can create a dynamic pipelines as part of this data factory. Now, where exactly this Databricks is coming into the picture? So there are many projects with only Azure Data Factory. There are many projects which are having only Azure Data Factory. And this Databricks also is available. And here we are going to talk about Azure Databricks. So Azure Databricks intention is also very much similar. Whatever Azure Data Factory is doing, before Azure Data Factory, there is a Databricks. So Databricks also is going to do the same thing. Databricks extracts the data from the data source. Generally, in the first stage, we are not going to use in general, or even if you want to use, you can use in the first stage Azure Databricks. So Azure Databricks also can extract the data from the various sources and is going to load the data into the destination. When you go for Databricks, we don't use the two stages. One stage is for ingestion and other stages for destination. I mean to say transformation. We are going to do directly everything at one place if it is a Azure Databricks. Okay, just for understanding, I'm saying wherever you are using Azure Data Factory, you can use Azure Databricks. Here also I can use Azure Databricks to do the ETL processing. The only difference is we have to write a code. By writing a coding only, we need to do the transformation. As I said, before Azure Data Factory, there was a Databricks to transform the data, to extract the data from various data sources, and to handle the big data processing. So all this stuff they used to provide the solution by using Databricks. And what Microsoft thing is, In place of writing the code, why don't we come up with the user-friendly tool to handle all this stuff? So because of that reason, the data factory came into the picture. So data factory is not only for one kind of activity, this is for everything. It does ETL processing, it does even machine learning activities we can use as part of this data factory. And data science related stuff also we can use as part of the data factory. It's an orchestration tool. You can use the utilization of Hadoop stuff. You can use the utilizations of data science related activities, machine learning related activities, and ETL related activities also. All together at one place is there. So that is what the data factory here. Okay, so now even still people are using only data factory is as part of single project. I have come across it. Even presently I'm working with one of the project is completely only data factory, nothing more than that. Data factory and Power BI. And we have a one more project that is combination of both of them. Azure Data Factory is there and Azure Databricks also is there. So primarily we are using this Azure Databricks for transformation, because I told you right, to go for transformation we have a data flow and we have a stored procedure. We are not using both of them. We are using Databricks to transform the data. So when you go for Databricks, we are going to use PySpark. You need to have a little coding knowledge to understand this PySpark. So people think that we need to have a Python or something. If you have a basics of that, that is more enough. As we are going to work as a data engineers, or we came most of the times we are going to handle the structured data. When you handle the structured data, we always recommend you to write the SQL. Starting Python, ending Python, middle is SQL only. Okay, so I'll take you through that, how it is going to be there, how we have implemented to transform the data by using PySpark. And even here also you can use it. Here also you can use the Azure Databricks to bring the data into Azure Data Warehouse. If you have a only Azure Databricks projects also, is going to be helpful to work if you finish the training here. Or if you have a project with only Azure Data Factory, that is also is going to be helpful. So these two combinations are very important combinations to work on the data engineering. Okay, so here we are going to see how we can handle the storage processing issues, how we can store the data as part of Azure, and how we can process the data. Practically everything we are going to say that. And apart from this data engineering role, a minimum 30 to 40% is administration role also we are going to touch, but that is for only practicing point of view that we are going to touch. We are not going to talk regarding as part of the activities. I mean to say, we are not going to talk towards to working on an administrator. We are going to take that administration to practice as part of data engineering stuff. So in at the time of working, they will take care about all this stuff. But whereas to practice from our side, we need to be make sure how we can create a storage accounts, how we can take a subscription, and how we can create a resource group, and how we can create a data factory. All those things I'm going to show you practically, and we are going to talk with the real-time use cases. That is what we have a plan. And just give me a moment. Somewhere I kept this. Just give me a moment. So what we are going to cover as part of this particular training is introduction to Microsoft Azure, that we are going to see what are the different types of services, what are the different types of vendors we are having, and how we can create a storage account, how we can create a virtual machines, what are the different storages we are having. So file system storage, database storages. Okay, so we can say data lakes also, we are going to talk about it. And we are also going to store the data as part of the SQL servers in Azure. So what are the different types of Azures that we are having, and how we can access the data storage account with the different approaches. We are having a access case, connection string, and so on. So how we can connect them, that we are going to see. So once you have a storage, if you have a storage, definitely we need to have a access. If you have access, then only you can read it and you can write it. So how we can do that, that I'm going to take you through, and how Azure Data Factory is going to access this particular storage to read the data for your processing, that I'm going to talk about it. And what are the different types of pricing tiers to for the storage. If it is a SQL server, how, what kind of pricing models we are having, and if it is a file system storage, how we are going to reduce the cost. The main intention to go to this particular cloud platform is to reduce the cost. Because of that reason, we are moving towards to the Azure Data Factory. There are many projects are moving. And Azure Data Factory we are going to touch right after talking about the storages. We're having a different kind of activities, different kind of things that we are going to see. What is a link service, data sets, pipelines, all those things I'm going to talk about it. And move and transform, just dumping and transform. So how we are going to dump the data and how we are going to transform the data, that we are going to see. We have a general activities to control the flow of execution, how we can control to flow. And before starting any activity, I wanted to log, I'm going to start this activity. So when I'm doing some activity, if there is any error, I wanted to log, I got this error when I'm doing some activity. So once everything is completed, I have to make sure, I need to log, yes, this activity is completed. So those things, if you wanted to handle it, we need to have all these activities. And we're also having a iteration and control activities. What are the use of this particular activities, how we can loop it. If there is a 10 items, I wanted to execute for 10 times. So how it is going to be possible, that we are going to see as part of this iterations and controls. And we're also going to touch this logic app to send and alert mails. How we can, if pipeline is failed, how do you know the pipeline is failed? You cannot continuously go and monitor your monitoring window. So you have to do your other activities and you need to get a trigger. So the trigger is going to get into your email if it is failed, and if it is succeeded, even succeeded mails also you are going to get it. So that we are going to say, and we are going to say minimum 20 different kind of real-time scenarios that we are going to come across it. These are all the real-time scenarios, and I'm also going to give some exercises also to do it from your side. So how we are going to handle it, that we are going to see as part of this. Everything is completely practically and theoretically. I'm going to explain the situation, how situation is there, and if you go with Azure Data Factory, how you're going to provide the solution. So what are the services we required? We need to take only required services. We don't require to take too many services from the Azure. So I'm just talking about only approach towards to the ETL processing, towards to the Azure data engineering rules. And we're also talking about a Databricks. So if it is a Databricks, how you're going to handle it? If it is completely Databricks project, you're not having Azure Data Factory, still you can handle it. And we are going to see, mostly we are going to talk about data frames. Data frames is like your tables. Most of the times we are going to use, but I'm also going to talk about RDDs. Before data frames, there was RDDs only. So later we got data frames API. So how we can create a RDDs and how we can convert those RDDs to data frames, or how we can directly create a data frames. And I'm going to talk about all those things as part of this. So for understanding this, you need to have a Python basics. Even if you're not having Python basics, that's fine. But at least over the period of time, you need to have a minimum what kind of data types we're having, what are the different types of collections we're having, and how we can read the data from the list, and how we can read the data from the tuple or set. We need to have some brief idea about it. And even if you're not aware of it, I'm just going to take you through directly with data frames. I mean to say with Databricks. It's very, very simple. If you wanted to do the same thing with Hadoop, you need to write hundreds of lines of code. But if you go with the Databricks, just a few lines are equivalent to 100 lines of this code. So that is what the difference between your Hadoop and Databricks. So Hadoop is completely on-premise and Databricks is completely cloud platform. There is no on-premise. Databricks is 100% is cloud platform. So that may be Amazon Cloud or even GCP, that is a Google Cloud platform, or Azure, whatever it is, that is completely cloud platform only. So I'll talk about the differences, why we need to go for Databricks when we have a already Hadoop platform, or why we need to go for Azure Data Factory also when we have a Hadoop. I'm going to talk about it in the regular sessions. So how we can do the transformations, a different kind of transformations we're having as part of this. So all those things I'm just going to talk about as part of this, and we are also going to talk about even we're having Spark SQL also. And the prerequisites for this particular training is basics of SQL. If we have a basics of SQL, that is fine. Okay. Or if we have a basics of Python, that is for Databricks. Even for Databricks, we are going to use the basics of the SQL only. Okay, so no worries. I'll take you through how we can handle, how we can read the data from the list, how we can read the data from the tuple. I'll take you through the few basics of the Python so that you can understand how we can bring the data from the by using the Databricks from the different storages. So this is about this content that we're having, and we're also going to talk about how the real-time activities that we are going to have it. So end-to-end implementation. So a project is going to be done not a single person, is going to be done by multiple persons. And I'm going to talk about approach, how it is going to be there. So what is the first step you are going to take when you get any ETL projects? Or even if you're migrating from any existed ETL project towards to the Azure Data Factory, what are the precautions that we are going to take? How can we take a requirement from the user? So which one has to be executed first? So project is going to be distributed into multiple pieces. So all these pieces you designed, and which piece has to be executed first and which piece has to go next. So all those things I'm going to talk as part of this. Okay. So I'm stopping here. If you have any question, you can ask me.
Yeah, hi. I have a question.
Yeah, I know some.
Yeah, hi. So, is a complete course is alone enough to clear data engineering certification?
Which from Azure side you are saying?
Yes, the course that
I-
currently you
That
explained that.
course is even having a synopsis also. So that is, this particular session is not towards to the certification. This particular
Ah,
thing is towards to the data engineering role.
okay.
There are
Uh,
few more content is there. Most of the content will be covered. There is a new topics like Azure functions is there, and Azure synopsis also is there. Azure
oh,
synopsis is nothing but Azure Data Factory plus Databricks. both together, and additionally they're having a Synapse SQL.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
this is going to be helpful for clearing that. And additionally,
Clear.
you need to upgrade even few things as part of that particular certification.
Okay.
Okay, I'll help you on it how we can handle it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? And all is completely practically you're going to have it, and you're going to say what is your input and what is your output, how we are going to do it. Okay, so in the regular sessions we are going to have a complete in detail, more and more details we are going to take you through. Okay, then if you're not having any questions, I'm wrapping up here. And if you have any, if you need any details, you can check with the career writer team. They will help you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.